Good afternoon. I am Chandra De Silva, Vice Provost, and I'm standing here for Provost Carol Simpson because she's busy trying to get more money in the budget hearings for all of you.
Yay!
And today it's my great pleasure and privilege to introduce Kay Palmer. Many of you know her really well. Associate Professor of Nursing, and I believe the undergraduate program director in nursing. And she's going to talk to you about 40 years of creativity in education. Now, not yet.
Okay.
I'm sure that all of you recognize that when Kay Palmer started, our society was very different from what it is today. The way people learn is quite different. And clearly, what I'm eager to hear is the way in which she has changed her teaching strategies to accommodate our teaching, our efforts to the changes in learning styles, to the changes in environment. And I know, of course, that she has gone from being a teacher who did face-to-face instruction to teaching on teletechnet, on television, and now I believe online. So I'm not going to talk too much about her because you're going to listen to her in person, and I give you Kay Palmer.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm surprised there's anybody here. I walked out of the building. It was so beautiful. The closer I got, I thought, do I really want to go back inside again? And my thought was, So congratulations to those of you who came back in a building again. What I'm going to talk about is I'm going to talk about 40 years of creativity. And as you can see from the title, 40 years, that's a heck of a long time teaching. Now I can tell you one thing. When you talk about 40 years, you think of age. I'll tell you one thing, age does not always equal wisdom. So I'm talking to you from age. You can make the decision whether there was any wisdom there or not. That's completely up to you. One of the things that Allison said to me was, share your philosophy. And I went, oy vey, I've written my philosophy of nursing, et cetera, all these philosophies. What's my philosophy of education, being here at ODU? And I said, well, I decided early on back in when I started to become an educator, that I was going to have fun. Life is short, ladies and gentlemen. And when you're the age of a lot of people in this part of the room, you don't think that. But when you're this, Dr. Seacrest, life is definitely, based upon the law of averages, much shorter. So my basic philosophy was, well, obviously, I like to eat. I like to have a roof over my head because I love air conditioning now. And in the winter, I like heat. So I needed to have a job, a job. But you know, when life is short, as it is for every one of us sitting here, if the job could be fun, it's not a job. You don't get up in the morning and go, oh, I'm going to the job again. Now, I'll tell you, there are some days when I come into work and I'm going, oh my, I'm going to the job again. But basically, 99% of the time, it's fun. If I was a millionaire, don't you tell Provost Simpson this. If I was a millionaire, I would still come because it's fun. I enjoy it. I enjoy learning from the students. I enjoy learning with the students. I am very blessed in that I work with a very intelligent, creative group of faculty. So it's fun. So that's my basic philosophy. Now that you've got all of that high, heavy philosophy stuff, let's go on to something else now. I was supposed to talk about mousetraps. How to build a better mousetrap. That's what this is going to be about, how to build a better mousetrap. Now, I'm sure Provost Simpson had no idea this sartorial garb on this mouse has absolutely nothing to do with the discussion that's going on. We're not supporting anything to do with leather, etc. Okay? But what we are going to be supporting is looking at how to build a better mousetrap. And in reflection, I guess in the 40 years of my experience as an educator, over in nursing we say all the time, we teach our students, look outside the box. We talk to ourselves, well, what's an outside the box solution that can be done? But I challenge you. I guess my personality has always been, what box? Someone gives me a box and, I get a little difficult to deal with. Because of the fact, if you're looking with no box, you can then come up for a solution to the problem without a box. Because you aren't looking outside. There's nothing there to hinder you. No box equals creativity. I have been very blessed in working with the Center for Learning and Teaching and pushing them in OCCS to, okay, this is what I want, fix it, and make it occur. So creativity equals no box, whether you start with one and get out or whether you don't have a box to start with. I want to talk about the components of creativity with you for a minute. And you all know this. I'm just reinforcing it. The first thing that you've got to do in a learning environment is you've got to identify what's your learning issue, what's the learning problem. And that's your biggest challenge. The biggest challenge because if you don't identify the actual problem that you're having, if you only identify the symptom, remember I'm a nurse, if you only identify the symptom, you're never going to solve the problem. So once you've really identified the problem, your next step is to go on and say, what's my desired outcome? For those of you in a more business environment, what's my deliverable or my achievable? What do you want to get when you're done? Then you go to the last step. What are the possible solutions that can bring me to my desired outcome? I must tell you very truthfully, that's what's been the 40 years of fun. I'll tell you right off the top, I am a gadget lover. Nowadays, though, I sometimes need help. Like David had to fix my iPad the other day for me because I couldn't get it to do what I wanted it to do. I love gadgets, though. They're getting a little bit in front of me. That may be age function. But gadgets are not creativity. Not at all. Gadgets are a tool, and sometimes we forget that. We want to use the gadget because some of us are gadget people and like the gadgets. But they do not themselves bring about a solution to the problem. They're a tool. They're a means to an end, a means to bring about learning or engage the student in learning. So let's take a look at a couple examples of creativity. Here's the first one for you. We had a problem in our first nursing course. The students did not understand the language. Yes, we spoke English, but we spoke medical healthcare English. And they didn't understand what we were saying to them. So for a long time, there's been books out. Remember, I started with a book teaching. There weren't computers when I started teaching. There were hard copy syllabuses that you carried around. And you went to the library because you couldn't sit at home and look at the library. So there were books that were published, and you rotely memorized. This word means this. This word means this. Back in the old days, when we used to file things in file cabinets, when you learn something rotely, like your alphabet, what did you do when you wanted to file P? Well, if it was me, it was M-N-O-O-P-Q. So I look between P and Q. That's the problem with rote learning. Students have to creatively think in a hospital situation. They don't have time to go M-N-S-O-P-Q. They need to pull it out quickly. And then they even sometimes can't remember the alphabet. So here's what we started. We realized we had a problem. because we were lecturing and we said, make sure your male patient has a duck. And the student thought, see the little white feathery thing? Duck. You mean you can bring ducks into hospitals? No, the nurses meant a male urinal. We tell the students that after the patient used the bedpan, you should clean the bedpan. Wash it out in the toilet. So we've seen students in my career take the bedpan, take the toilet, and go up and down in the water in the toilet. What did we actually mean? Well, hospital toilets have a lever. You pull the lever down, you flush the toilet, it goes whoosh like a regular toilet, and water runs out of that faucet. So there was a communications issue. So 3 of us decided, well, let's get them used to communicating early on. Let them have something that's more natural. So what we developed is we developed a virtual hospital. And we started off and we gave a picture, scary picture, and it had the patient talking down there in type, and the student typed something in response, and then they went off and did the assignment. That's where we started, at the very beginning. And it was successful. It helped the students learn. I have a question for you now. Everybody ready? Creativity and rabbits, what do they have in common? Just a minute. Allison's got to go.
That's all right, I'm coming. They both multiply.
You got it. Creativity. Oh, I had too smart of a group. Okay. Creativity and rabbits do multiply. Because if you have an environment where creativity is allowed to occur, it's going to multiply, just like these rabbits multiply. So let's take a look at what happens. We started off with 5 people who were interested. 3 left. That left 2 people who were still interested in the Monarch General Hospital. It was a pain in the butt, I'll tell you. Oh, I shouldn't have said that. It was a pain in the gluteus maximus. That's a healthcare term for the same thing. The problem is whoever talks to somebody when all they have is a script to read. That's not what really goes on in a hospital. So we developed a new system. With the help of 2 federal grants, we developed a system where there was a talking person. The student would type in a question, and then the patient would talk back. With the help of the Thomas Center, for standardized patients, those are medical actors, we developed a more realistic environment. Then we decided, oh, that's a great idea, but we wanted to make change. And to make change, what we had to do is have to tape the whole thing all over again. Heavenly days if one of the actors changed, because then we had to take the whole scenario all over again. Expensive. Remember, this first effort was with a grant. So we decided, okay, avatars would be cheaper. Once they were developed, we could just change them as we needed them. And so what we developed here is an avatar environment patients. The creativity continued. We started with 5, went down to 2, and then went back up to 4 or 5 people who were interested. And there's a moral to this story that we're going to talk about later. We're now at a crossroads. We have a degree in nursing behind our names. We are not computer programmers. Some of us, excluding Donna, who can make her own avatars, some of the rest of us don't make avatars very well, don't understand the process. We just want to say, this is what we want. Now we're at another crossroads. How do we achieve that? Federal government gave us 1.5 to get this far, and we aren't going to get any more money from the feds. So we're at another crossroads. We'll talk about that in a little while. That's one example of creativity. Sometimes creativity equals adaptation. And that's a big term for I stole another idea from somebody else. Okay? I have taught nursing research since my first course as a nurse educator, undergraduate research, which in 40 plus years has been a long time. Now, I know all of the pedagogy. Teaching is passive, learning is active. When you just talk, you have teaching, and you got to have something active for learning. So I turned it into a talking head. Students were having problems in my course. That was the problem. The distance learning students this was the only course they failed in distance learning in nursing. Problem. My pre-licensure students hated the course. So I needed to figure out what could I do differently. So one night I was at dinner with some of my lawyer friends, and we started to talk about education, and they said, well, we used the case study method, and we did this and this and this. And I went, drat. I heard all this, but it didn't sink in. So I changed the course around. All these pearls of wisdom that I felt I had to give to the students became talking PowerPoint. I divided them into groups because QOL, quality of life, is very important for faculty. Instead of 150 research papers to read, I was going to decrease the number a little, so I put them into groups. And they took a problem, developed a hypothesis, and did a micro, mini little proposal. And during that process, learned the steps, learned how to analyze. And that did much better. They were actively involved, and I was no longer the talking head, thank goodness. We even took this to another step. What we did is we involved a select group of our grad students who were in a nursing research course. They were assigned to be a mentor for one of the groups. So each group had its graduate student mentor. And the graduate student mentor had to help the graduate students through the process. Well, the graduate students did things like, I finally learned that stuff because I had to teach it to somebody else. The undergraduate students liked hearing from them more than they liked hearing from me. So it was a win-win situation. And we're going to talk about ideas in just a few minutes. That idea did not make it. Just stay around still. I also told the idea of problem-based learning. And I killed two birds with this stone. What I do is I teach a rehab course, physical rehabilitation for nurses. And I was reading at the end of the semester 2 research papers per student where they were analyzing research. And at the end of the semester, as I have matured, I have found that all-nighters don't work. And after I got into the 30th paper, they were starting to blur. So I came up with another solution. I asked them to creatively identify an educational need of some kind and develop a solution for it. I had a group of 5 students who were all back from Iraq, who were with the School of Nursing to get their BSN. And so what they did is they knew a Monarch General. They were involved with some of the testing. And they developed a scenario. They developed a scenario of a patient who was over in Iraq. He was leading the troops. In fact, he was from Monarch Battalion, graduated from ODU, and ran over an IED, killed 2 of his command in the explosion, and he became a bilateral amputee. And they developed the whole scenario. They even, at that point in time, got the right name of the units, took them from Landstuhl to Walter Reed into the rehab unit at Walter Reed. They learned from this. They were absolutely amazed at what military medicine did for them and how they triaged them, what they did in rehab. So they had a learning curve there. I then took their scenario and put it into the environment. I no longer lecture at all about amputations. What I do is the students go, look at the PowerPoint, and then Brad will answer their questions. And Brad covers every major point that I wanted in the lecture. They have to figure out in talking with Brad all of the points I want them to cover. So the learning curve on this is amazing. When we're doing Brad, they come in for class prepared that day. I mean, they've read the lecture, okay, which is nice. And then they are absolutely amazed at their knowledge base and what they're able to pull up. So this was a problem-based learning scenario that had 2 advantages to it. But I need to tell you, creativity is not without its risks. And you have to be willing to accept some of those risks. Coming up with a solution is like birthing a baby or becoming a new father. That little thing is the most beautiful thing you've ever seen in the world. To somebody else who's looking down at it, oh, that's an ugly kid. Okay? But to you, what is it? A beautiful thing. So you create your solution here. You birth that thing, and it's wonderful. And I couldn't understand why everyone else didn't see that it was wonderful, too. That happens. So you have to be willing to birth that baby. You have to be willing to do the failure or withstand that failure if you're going to birth the baby, if you're going to come up with a great idea. One of the easiest ways is to have support. And even when they didn't agree with me, the people I work with have been supportive and said, yeah, great idea, Kay. Wonderful idea, Kay. And then, realistically, it was too problematic and didn't use it. You've got to be willing to accept support, even when they don't agree with you. There are potential for negative comments, and that concerns everybody because they come from students, and they're in the student evaluation, and, you know, that affects all of us, our pay raises, our tenure, etc. I have been fortunate enough, though, that the negative comments I have gotten through the years, and there have been a lot of them about the new things that I've tried, that they have been at the solution and not trying to tear me apart personally. And I think part of that is in the way that they were presented. First of all, students always like to know they get a reward for something. And the way we pay them, points, okay? So they got points for trying something new and different. The other thing that I did is I told them up front, we're trying this idea. It may or it may not work. You're the evaluators of it. Yeah, you're guinea pigs. Don't tell me about it. Everybody's a guinea pig sometimes. But it may make it better for other people coming along. And they will tear it apart, which is good. But they usually have not torn me apart. Then, failure. That does happen. And you know, I always love that story. You know, the story about Thomas Edison, a young man, was a reporter asked Thomas Edison, don't you feel like a failure? You tried 9,000 times. You had 9,000 failed light bulbs filling this room. He says, no, I'm not a failure. The 10,000th one worked. So I'm not a failure. Sometimes the difference between being a success and achieving a solution that you want to a problem is trying something different one more time. And to me, that's the fun of the creativity, trying something different when the first effort that you thought, or the 30th effort that you thought was good, but did not work. Now remember, I talked about rabbits and how creativity multiplies. No. I'm not, it just dawned on me when I got the facial response that I did that, whoa, what is she saying about us, okay? This is G rated, okay? In a creative environment where people are supportive of each other, there's a willingness to try something different. And Donna Rose had a problem. Her problem was that, Donna, raise your hand. She was teaching a course for beginning students who were going into clinical. There's a thing called pass-off in healthcare, where she gives the information about the patient she was taking care of to this nurse, and then later to this doctor or to this therapist. It has been identified through research that that point in pass-off is a time of major, major problems. We call them sentinel events. Things that kill patients can occur. So she had students going in, first time, how in the heck do you teach them what is important and what is crap, or what is social conversation, and what do you really need to know about your patient? So she developed an avatar, and that avatar gave a report. And then the students had to plan their care based upon the avatar. It worked beautifully. In fact, the faculty who were in clinical with those students identified the fact, hey, there's something different. These students this time were more prepared. Success. Of course, I'm only going to tell you successes. Let me tell you about Suzanne Van Orden. Suzanne, raise your hand. Suzanne teaches a course that has anywhere from 90 to 120 students in it. And this course is where the student develops their philosophy of nursing. We're a portfolio program, so they revisit that philosophy in their last semester in the course. So it's an important aspect. Besides the fact that at the end of the semester, Suzanne is reading 120 philosophy papers. And I don't know about you, but they can be a little boring. And in spite of the work to improve their writing, it seemed to be a lot of cut and paste. They really didn't get down to the gut or the core of what their philosophy was. So she came up with a creative idea. And this is show and tell. Again, she, instead of having the students write that dumb philosophy paper, she had them develop something creative. First semester she tried it. She shared, what do you think? Do you think this will work? And yeah, go for it. Go for it. Besides, anything's better than reading all those papers. It's got to be. So here's what she tried. She told them to create something that expressed their philosophy. What they had to do then is they had to take and write a 2-3 page on what they did. She got everything from poem to food to jewelry. One of the ones that a lot of the faculty fight over, but someone has claimed, is an old window that someone created and put a lot of colored glass on it in a pattern and explain their philosophy that way. Can I ask your assistance, please, since you're on the end? Is this a Thank you. Okay. Now this is what one student created. Can you see that? Okay. This is what one student created. A quilt, a little quilt. So let's just take a little look here. Students started out writing that nursing and quilting have been intertwined. That Florence Nightingale and other nurses quilted blankets out of the scraps of fabric to provide comfort to the wounded soldiers in Crimea. I didn't know that. I thought that was an interesting piece of information. And the quilt itself represents comfort and care. The white heart has been the international symbol for nursing since 1999. It symbolizes caring, etc. The flame. Okay. The gold. The gold. Okay, gold is flame. Represents knowledge and continuing education. Now this obviously is a creative process that this student really developed a philosophy. Thank you. Really developed a philosophy of nursing, was able to explain it, and was in depth. But because she had support, she was willing to go out on a limb and try something different in an environment where that paper was one of the beginning pieces of the portfolio process in the program. And let me tell you, in the fall, at the end of the semester, when she has that class, when they start to present those, that's one of the favorite places for me to be after the class because I can come down and see all the creative ideas. The faculty are quite abuzz to learn the things that her students have created. So, creativity is like rabbits. It does multiply with time. Now, I've talked at you for half an hour. I shared time, There are other examples that I didn't even mention in the room that I know of because they're from my department, such as global health in a wiki country, things like that. But remember, creativity comes from support. So I'm going to give you a challenge. This is not conducive to talking as a group. It's set up for a talking head approach. But what I want you to do is this. I want you to either share with the group an issue that you have that you would like the group to see if they have a creative idea for, or share with the group a solution that you came up with for a problem, and we'll give you the ultimate compliment. We'll steal your idea. Okay?
I'm Ann Taylor Cahill from the Philosophy Department, and I'd like to know how I can do something creative instead of having those boring final papers.
That's an excellent question. If Suzanne will raise her hand, there is one approach that you saw. Does anyone else have a solution? And Suzanne will be more than happy to talk with you. See her afterwards, okay? Anyone else have an idea? Everyone's asking, what's the topic?
I have to tell you, I love to get the nursing students in my classes. They're the best. They're really good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, just a minute, stop. You have to pass the mic. It doesn't go in the room.
Well, actually, I'm doing the QEP writing class. I have to say that because my boss is here too. And one of the assignments for my course is an ethical issues paper. And it was very boring. For one thing, they had trouble even identifying an ethical issue. So in taking the course, and our last day is tomorrow, so I finally have my new assignment ready, I actually provided them with an ethical scenario. And also gave them a role for this particular paper. They are they're a nurse, but they have to present their opinion to the ethics committee. So that was one thing that we learned through the course was give the students a role and sometimes provide them with a scenario. So I haven't tried it yet. We'll see this summer how it goes.
We do the case studies, but I hadn't thought I could give them a role.
Donna brought up a very good point. We at Old Dominion are very, very blessed. When I hear what some of our colleagues teaching at other institutions do not have, we've had the Center for Learning and Teaching for many, many years. Other people don't have that. We have a summer institute that will be held
May 22nd, 21st and 22nd.
May 21st and May 22nd, so it gets on the thing, that provides us with creative ideas. They may not provide an issue that you had, but sometimes the solutions you can creatively steal and make them work for an issue that you have. We also have the QEP that you can become involved in. And we really do have a wealth of help in our role as educators here that a lot of institutions do not have. So I encourage you to come out in droves and drag at least one friend kicking and screaming to Summer Institute. Once they come, I've gone for, when do they start? Oh, how many?
This is our 15th.
The 15th?
This is our 15th.
I've been to about 14 of them, and I've learned something every time. It's been exciting. And you know what it does? It kind of sparks that creativity. So try that. Anyone else have another issue?
Just wanted to say that their sign up now for the QEP workshops for the fall. I'm on the advisory board for the QEP, and we only have 12 people who have signed up so far. So if you're interested, I'm going to sign up.
After that brief commercial message. One of the things that I've done to get out of the traditional term paper mode is to challenge small groups of students to put together a module for the next semester's offering of the course. The module to include a list of readings that the next semester students could refer to, a set of slides that they then demo to the class this semester, and must also include an assignment for the students the next semester. And by the way, you'll find that students are very mean to one another when it comes to putting together assignments for the future.
That's an excellent idea.
I'm only a second year teacher here. I'm a grad student actually, but I teach perception psychology class. But a good idea for something like philosophy might be having them adopting a philosophy that isn't theirs and having to write from that perspective. I did that as an undergrad and it was definitely useful. Something that I do in my own classes is ask students to write test questions, and then they have to answer the test question, and then I end up including a number of them on my tests.
Okay.
What is your solution for creating community and collegiality among students and sparking creativity, so all 3 C's, in students who are in online environments?
Here we go.
That is a good question. Someone have a solution?
I can speak to it. It's actually
Good.
something it's actually something that we did this past year in one of the classes. And because we have the nurse executive DNP students and the APN DNP students, and never the twain shall meet. They really came from different philosophies. And what we did was we put them into groups and had them adopt a technology that neither one had used before, and gave them, they had to come up with something that they had to introduce themselves to each other, talk a little bit about what their expertise was, come up with a topic that they could collaborate on to improve a patient outcome, and create a program together, and what each of them could bring to it. And that it really was, they really enjoyed it, and they could see things from each other's perspective, and it really got them to step out of the box. And they used Skype and Tango and FaceTime. They could only use a technology that was like a video or something that neither one had used before. So they also got that from it. So
that's good.
that was one thing. Then they had to write a little paper about it. So.
I have one I could use some help with the group, and I haven't presented this to CLT yet, but I force group activity because that's one of the things that the faculty identified in the School of Nursing was very important. Because as healthcare providers, we have to work together in groups. So we have a lot of group activities. You know, students' response to group activities is screaming, yelling, pain, and et cetera. And in any group, you have, let's say you have 10 groups. You'll have 2 that work successfully. You'll have 2 that are utter failures. You'll have 1 or 2 that break apart. How do you handle the issue? And my issue is the fact that some personalities do not weld. There will be 2 people who do all the work. Now, I do the traditional thing that CLT taught me, June taught me this, where we do the evaluation. The group evaluates the other participants and rates it. They do that. But some students just write it off. How do you get the group to work? Anyone's got some ideas? I'm at a loss.
Well, I think the answer to that is what our scholarship consultant taught us, which is partnership agreements before you start the project. Because if everybody comes to the table understanding what's expected of them, and they all agree, and they sign on the dotted line, then they know what their role is, what the responsibility is, and what the deadline is. And getting that agreement up front before you start anything hopefully will alleviate problems in the end.
Another possible strategy is always assign roles and make the roles very clear from the beginning of the outset of the project. And you said give them a reward in points. I always assign a group, part of the grade is for group process, and I observe, as some of the students can say, the group process. And so as the project is going on, maybe the first 2 weeks, they get feedback from me on what's going well, what's not going well, and what are we going to do to address that?
Good idea.
I was just going to tack on to what you said. What I do is I do group projects as well. And if you know the students, which I do, and I know you guys do as well, the quiet ones I make the leaders, and they don't like that, so that puts them outside their comfort zone. The ones that are very bubbly and outgoing and want to be the leaders, I make the recorders. And it drives them crazy because they can't sit still. I get notes with squirrely faces and rabbits and everything on the side. But I'll assign someone to be a chief tech who's never been a manager. I'll assign someone. So it really lets them work together, but in an interesting way, I think.
That's a good idea.
I was going to say group, try to do both group accountability and individual accountability. Build that in, whether it is a paper or something they have to turn in or whatever. I had a second, and it's gone.
To piggyback the idea about roles is if you have more than one activity for the groups to do during the semester, to rotate those roles so they all have a similar experience and get to wear the same hats.
I thought of it. If you can scaffold, if you can do some preliminary things that talk about the dynamics of groups, how groups do work effectively together prior to them going into that exercise, then they have some things in mind that they should be, noting and watching for.
The scaffolding is also talked about a lot in the QEP.
I come from industry and business, and I wanted to emphasize the comment on defining structure and roles ahead of time and not accepting the "we have conflicting personality" answer. In industry, you can't say, I don't get along with that person because the group still has to function. And so we had to just say, okay, find the contributing factor of the C- person in the group and the A person in the group and get the best out of every one of them or the group won't succeed. And so it was very hard. And then for the distance thing, we have to use Skype. It has to involve the face. We find that conference calls alone don't do it. And so either, Microsoft Communicator or Skype or WebEx or whatever you want to call it, you've got to involve the face in those meetings or the voice alone doesn't do it.
Anyone else? Do we have any more issues or any more solutions? Well, then, there is time, unless you have a plug on something.
I'll just do
There
a
is
plug
time
for
to
Summer
make
Institute.
What?
I'll just do a plug for Summer Institute.
Okay,
It's
well, then I'll do a
CLT
plug for the brownies over there.
Go for it.
Just leave me one. Thank you very much for your time and for your participation. Have a great day.